We got a lot of work to do, me, you, the entirety of the human race, as we sit at a standstill, this whole species going through an identity crisis, as we work to pull out of the medieval era. Folks, we've got an entire society and culture to build from the ground up. So in these videos, we talk about the nature of the times, not only what's going on these weeks, end of June, start of July 2023, but what the heck's going on long term, this whole species evolution? What is going on in our spiritual stage of consciousness? So for those who are unfamiliar, we're a little bit progressive in these videos. I offer some practical suggestions as well as make social commentary. And in this video in particular, I'm going to be doing what I do to those I love, adding a little bit of a nudge. Hey, isn't this where we want to go? Isn't this what's a little bit up ahead? So for those who have asked me, Tim, why aren't you at this New Age retreat? Or how come I haven't seen you at the astrological conventions? Well, first of all, I was probably not invited. And secondly, that's because I take a different slant. I am not necessarily doing the exact same things or wanting to do the exact same things. I'm a little bit progressive, also can be a bit controversial. By the way, I could still use those invitations. I'll put my email in the video description below if you do want me to show up at an event you feel my voice or ideas would be useful and relevant. I would love to be there. Also, I would love to see, for those of you interested in astrology, in my Astro School. I'm hoping to finish that curriculum by the end of this year, adding new lessons every month. Includes a monthly Q&A circle where you can bring your birth chart in, ask questions to me directly, and we get to test drive EA, so to prove its usefulness and validity in real time. Okay, so we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about especially what's going on these weeks, but as well as some of these deeper, more significant long-term shifts. We're talking about Neptune stationing retrograde on the 30th. We're talking about a Capricorn full moon, got business to attend to. We got healing going on in our body, so much shifting in terms of money and relationships with Venus and Mars square Uranus. And where I believe we'll start for this particular broadcast is, believe it or not, we're going to talk about some asteroids. There's been some significant asteroid shifting, and just like the rest of the planetary bodies, believe it or not, this affects the entirety of our consciousness. We may not have the ontological evidence as to why, but the statistical and purely observational evidence is all there. So we had 3 of the major asteroids recently shift signs. Ceres entered Libra the 21st, where she will remain through September 15th. The partnership asteroid just entered Cancer on the 22nd through August 15th, and Vesta entered Gemini, where she will remain through September 13th. Now, this recent new moon was square to Neptune, and Neptune is also stationing retrograde. So we're going to talk about the significance of that. In particular, this does get into some deeper, more ontological, spiritual, what the heck is the purpose of everything. These are things we can be questioning. Now, around the same time, asteroid Ceres is square to asteroid Juno, the partnership asteroid. And these next several days, Mercury, the god of communication, is going to conjoin asteroid Juno and square asteroid Ceres. So this can very much play out in our relating, our exchanges, in particular the communication. This is suggesting that there's things to work out. There is a processing that's going on. And again, when we're going to take a deeper look at Neptune, we're going to see that this can really get to the depth of exploring and comprehending what is real, what's not real, what are we doing? Is this real? Is this not real? How can we form exchanges and relationships that are going to be both meaningful and supportive? And that's going to be the theme that I extend all throughout this report as we talk about the full moon in Capricorn as this incredibly ambitious, pragmatic, it's time to get serious, it's time to get to business. It's seeking discipline, action, and accountability. And that full moon formed out of the new moon that was square to Neptune, where again, there's this deeper questioning and dreaming and seeking purpose. So how can we make things work? Not merely dreaming, but bringing things into reality. And generally, as Neptune stations retrograde, the experience can be the fog machine turns off. It's not just about naive romantic daydreaming. It's about truly harnessing our love, our creative power from our hearts, but also making it work. And we'll talk about the importance of this, especially at this time, is needed in order to evolve our culture, society, and spiritual worlds into the future. Now, asteroid Juno, conjoined with Mercury, is bringing up these discussions. There's collaborations. We mentioned in the last video how Venus and Mars are moving together through the sign of Leo. And this is continuing through these next few weeks. And there's a creative charge. There's a romantic charge. We'll talk about these two planets squaring Uranus can also bring up a lot of shocking, unexpected changes in terms of finance, relationship, body, health. This is also where we're experiencing a huge degree of restlessness, like let's make change. I'm feeling stuck in this old dynamic. I'm feeling imprisoned in this old way of relating. I can't continue to earn money in this exhausting way. And there are new and exciting possibilities for us to break into fresh behaviors, new ways of relating. Mars is going to move into Virgo with asteroid Pallas Athena July 10th. So we'll talk about later on in July how we're especially going to put the focus on our body and our health. What the purpose of life is in the meantime and how we're relating and exchanging this thing called love could continue to be a topic of discussion. And in particular, Mercury Juno square to Ceres means that there could be potential communication or emotional entanglements. Like we really need to be vulnerable and to practice putting it out there, even the little bits and pieces that we feel inadequate about sharing. This is one of the cultural, societal areas that I have just, pinpointed and diagnosed, and it severs my relationship with a lot of the stereotypical New Age. We're going to talk about this later on. Again, this is going to be progressive, some of the ideas that I'm sharing, but there is a whole lot of fake spirituality out there, and that has the whole put a smile on, always see things as positive. If you thought or believed the right things, you could change your life into being exactly what you want, which I will assure all of you is total bullshit. There is absolutely a need for us to keep our chin up and be open to possibility so we don't shut ourselves down from new experiences. But there's a whole lot of entitlement, avoidance, and sweeping under the rug. And the point is, we have already been societally and culturally trained to be this way. This is nothing new. This is not true spirituality. So we're culturally, societally, and even sometimes spiritually shamed for speaking our deeper emotions, especially those deeper emotions that may seem a bit negative or a bit nitpicky or a bit personal, or, oh my gosh, it turns out I do have a thing called an ego, which is a part of my consistent preaching. We don't want to demonize the ego. We don't want to say to ourselves or other, oh, that's coming from a place of ego, or get over your ego. Again, this is all patriarchal bullshit that actually fundamentally oppresses the divine feminine, including the moon, our emotions, our feelings. And yes, our ego exists for very good reason. So the point is we need to voice these things. That bothers me. That hurt my feelings. When you said this, I felt this way. Is there any way that we can change these things? And it is not complaining. It is not complaining. It is such an inappropriate spiritual stigma that we should think or feel bad about our own misery, as if experiencing misery makes us a miserable person. And we're afraid of coming off that way. We're afraid of repulsing everybody. And I will tell you, in these superficial, New Age, spiritual, cultural, societal biased places, we probably will repulse others by being vulnerable, but those are not safe places. Those are not our people. And there is no possibility possibility for any healing to happen in such environments. So, long story short, with Mercury, Juno square to Ceres, we actually need to practice putting our emotions into words, even if that's a little bit uncomfortable for us. And I'll make this a little bit more simple to digest. For many of us, we are highly sensitive. Those tuning into these videos, there's a lot of empaths, there's a lot of sensitive souls. We feel other people's feelings as if they were our own. We don't need other people to necessarily put it into layman's terms. We can understand what's going on in others. However, others do not necessarily have that capability. We ourselves could come off entirely mysterious. People may not know what's going on inside of us. That can lead to a whole lot of tripping over our own shoelaces. So we actually need to practice putting into words, communicating, creating safe space, even if it gets a little uncomfortable, a little frictiony. It's like, hey, I'm processing these emotions. Hey, these things are actually important to me. I would not be having an emotional response if that were not the case. So there's a lot of healing going on through communication, through relationship, through the mirror of the other. Through the first couple weeks of July, Mercury will move on to square Chiron July 6th, and this theme will continue of needing to communicate, needing to express, even if some of what we're communicating and expressing is a little bit hard to hear, better than living in a false, inauthentic reality. More on that later. Now, Venus and Mars are together in Leo. So again, this is a romantic period. We may be noticing, some fireworks, some relationships, reconnecting, collaborative projects, artistic projects. This is about expressing our hearts, celebrating our humanity, sharing what we want to share, finding the way, the rate, and the pace that works for us. And so there is a momentum there that can really be continuing to grow these next several weeks. But as Mars squares Uranus, that's today, the 26th, and then Venus follows on July 2nd with a square to Uranus, there brings this high degree of restlessness. Uranus is the planet of the future. Much of what I'm going to be sharing here is from a Uranian progressive experience, which is one of, well, I just mentioned how we should not be shaming this complaining. Of course not. How are we going to make changes or improve if we're pretending that everything we're already doing is, saving grace and the best that it can be? So, divine discontent is the phrase I affectionately associate with Uranus, which sounds something like, yeah, what we're doing right now, I guess, is okay, but don't you know it could be so much better and humanity could be so much more evolved and we could be so many decades into the future. That's the restlessness. That's the divine discontent of Uranus. So today it's Mars square Uranus, which we especially feel in our body, energy levels. It's like we have a sip of coffee and suddenly we're bouncing off the walls. That sip of coffee also wakes us up to the fact that we feel a little bit itchy right now. And this room is a little bit less organized and a little bit more restrictive than we would like. And we start to bounce off the walls. So this requires experimentation. Even if we don't have the ready solution, say you're stuck in an actual prison cell, we need to do the best that we can to bring the new in, even if that means rearranging the furniture in your room, or I believe I've even used the personal example in these videos of talking to a sock puppet. Whatever is needed to bring in change, even if it's a little weird or eccentric, that can at least get the ball rolling. But Mars square Uranus today says something needs to change, something needs to shift in order to bring back excitement, momentum, the sense of being alive. And again, we're going to speak about how this is going to move in an increasingly bodily and health-oriented direction as Mars pulls into Virgo on July 20th, joined with asteroid Pallas Athena. That's a very shift into let's get clean and let's get healthy going on mid-July. All right. This can also bring sudden changes to money, finances, relationship. Hey, let's experiment a little bit. Hey, let's bring in, new things, new people, new dynamics into our intimate ways of relating, as well as how we're earning and spending and exchanging money, resources. That's been the theme of these years, but we're really pulling into new routines, new ways of stabilizing, that at the same time, hopefully brings in more resources, more money. So this is the time to take those risks. It's the time to do something different. Even if it's not totally certain, we can be paying it forward. These experiments can open the doors to new possibilities, to bringing in all the above in increasingly easy and effortless ways. Okay, that brings us to our full moon at 11 degrees of Capricorn on July 3rd. This full moon is aligned with the planetary nodes of Jupiter, and the full moon is also trine to Jupiter in Taurus, as well as slightly square to Chiron. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, we discussed the new moon in Gemini. That new moon sets the pace, the tone, the evolutionary intentions and energy for the entire lunar cycle. Okay, so that new moon in Gemini, square to Neptune. Now Neptune is stationing retrograde on the 30th, has this questioning of reality. What is actually meaningful? What is the purpose of life? What actually matters? Who am I? Who are you? What are we actually doing? And there's more questions than answers. And now that new moon unfolds into the full moon that illuminates this dynamic in Capricorn, and this further asks, now, what are we really doing in 3D? It's the time to get practical. It's the time to get pragmatic. It's the time to actually measure. No, like, where did we start? Where did we end off? Is it worthwhile? And are we actually building? Capricorn is invested in the long term. Not this idle daydreaming, but actual progressive building, step by step. The proof is in the pudding. Now, the fact that this full moon aligns with the nodes of Jupiter and is trine to Jupiter dials up the ambition. It's like, okay, no more waiting around. What have we been doing up until now? And what actually matters? What is actually changing the world or changing our lives or helping other people or building a business or building revenue? And this is where we have to get real. And this is where I'm going to make a commentary on spiritual, new age, societal, cultural blockages, where I see that we have some things to get over. And this is, by the way, coming from, having had thousands of clients and my own observations, my own life experience. It's not like I went to school or got a training in this. This is, again, coming from my own progressive commentary. Like sometimes folks say, Timothy, you must love Dan Brown. Well, I do love Dan Brown. He's speaking to many of the same things that I do. I also don't listen to Dan Brown because he's speaking to the same things that I do. So this is the commentary, is when it comes to our spirituality, what is actually spiritual? Because so much of what I observe out there is this spiritual ambition where people get very excited, very pumped up, but is it actually spiritual? And what I'm going to invite us all to do in a pragmatic, real world Capricorn way is discern, is judge. That's one of the most redundant things I communicate and preach, is let's judge. This whole spiritually naive, oh, we don't judge one another, oh, we only love one another. It's horseshit. The only people who believe they're not judging are liars. We need to judge. We need to assess our reality. We need to assess one another. We need to discern who are the right people, who are the right places, what are the right resources to make anything actually work. And every single time I bring up, yes, we need to judge, people come about and say, oh, no, we don't need judgment. We need discernment. Folks, the dictionary definition of discernment is how to judge well. So let's not make any of these realities or dynamics or words bad or negative. That's one of the hugest spiritual blunders ever, is there is this false spiritual ambition that we're on some mission and that we're at a war against evil. This is not real. There is no war between good and evil on earth. And there are many ambitious spiritualists out there who are very invested in this narrative, because this narrative is a coping mechanism for the deeper, more complex truths that they are not yet ready to face. So spiritual ambition can be invested into pretend, avoidance, and escapism. That's what so much spirituality actually ends up being. Hate to say it, but just calling it for what it is. This can be purely observed and reflected back. So here's a personal example. Aren't you all disappointed that I didn't charge you $60 for a summer solstice activation? I'm an astrologer. Shouldn't I be doing activations for you all? And you all pay me money and I all just, maybe ding some bells or, make some sounds and speak light language to you and you all get amazing downloads? Well, the reason I don't do that is that's fake bullshit. Activation doesn't mean anything, right? Every single one of these videos, I hope, is activating you, because I'm talking about things that hopefully apply to your life and can give you some validation and insight that's hopefully actually useful, and not in a simply believe it type of way, but in a measurable type of way. So what are all of these activations but people celebrating a significance without there actually being any significance at all? It's just a whole bunch of hubbubaloo, and people are addicted to that. So what it means to me to be spiritual is that we're compassionate. We are forming an orientation to the whole of life that's not just revolving around ourselves. We actually want to help other people. That's what compassion is, right? We feel into the suffering of the world, and we don't go, oh, you're complaining, shut the fuck up and positively manifest yourself out of poverty, as if you could. What we say is, oh my gosh, this person's poor because they don't have food. Let's get them what they need. And that's like all I'm ever doing in this Rasa Leela community and all this. It blows my mind that, oh my gosh, all we have to do is understand what's actually helpful. And for some radical reason, that's super radical. It's unbelievable to me. But the amount of bullshit out there, we don't need to even get into. It's like 90% of what's out there. People want to be deceived. Right? So when we're talking about Jupiter, Jupiter can be just as much cult as much as it can be actually human goodness and betterment, right? So do cults orient themselves to compassion, like they're actually measurably helping the people outside of the cult, or is the cult just self-absorbed and we are saved and everybody who joins is saved and everybody else is lost? What are you measurably offering the world? See, a lot of these spiritual New Age cults vilify Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, the ruler of this full moon. It's like we vilify people that are building in society. Oh, look at those one percenters, building in society, taking over the world. Well, we're not going to do any of that. We're just going to, not have a job and run off into the commune or whatever it may be. That's what God would want. That's the most spiritual thing to do, as if everybody doing that would lead to a wonderful world. Well, it seems to me we need doctors. It seems to me we need lawyers and police officers as well, but we're so busy damning the people that are actually doing good work as a coping mechanism for the work we're not doing. So are we actually spiritually ambitious? Are we actually offering something back to the world? Or are we creating a delusion to avoid our own lack of accountability? Yeah. Is it really spirituality that we're waking up and doing our Western aerobics, aka what we call yoga? Is that real spirituality? Is that offering something better to someone else outside of ourselves? I've quoted Neem Karoli Baba, Ram Dass's Guru Maharaji, many times. He was asked, how do I raise my kundalini? And he said, feed people, clothe people. He did not say, do kundalini yoga and start wearing a white turban. That's going to raise your kundalini. Why we do this Western aerobics in the morning is it's healthy. It makes us feel good in our body. Folks, that's really important stuff. And that's really wonderful. And I'll also add, there is nothing spiritual about that whatsoever, unless you're using and doing that to be of service to others in some way. But boy, we have to puff ourselves up really big and make everything we're doing super changing the world out of a coping mechanism. Why else would we have to build up these massive delusions if there wasn't something else we're trying to avoid? We feel bad about not doing more. We haven't actually helped anybody outside of ourselves. We don't know how to help ourselves or others. We have missing needs, missing resources. We're lacking education. Well, those are hard things to look at. And we're never going to make any progress unless we make those hard looks, right? So many people would actually consider souls more spiritually evolved than themselves as evil or dark, because they may, the more evolved soul, be learning, how do I create change? How do I push things forward? And sometimes that can be a little bit edgy, and sometimes that comes off in a way that we don't understand because it's not normal to us. It hasn't been spoon-fed to us in the past. So we say, oh, there's something wrong with them. They're dark, they're evil, they're power obsessed. When that's someone who's attempting to make change in the world. I can't tell you how much I've had that projected onto me just because I stick my face out on YouTube and I'm not afraid to speak my mind and I lead a community. So people assume, well, clearly I'm just a self-obsessed cult leader and it's all about me just wanting people to be obsessed with myself. I tell you, I don't give a shit about any of that. I'm really passionate about humanity progressing into the future. And when I evaluate myself, like you've heard me in this channel, I believe evolutionary astrology is a very useful tool. That's why I'm teaching it in my school. I don't have this, we're saved and you're not. This is a tool, you learn it, use it, and then get back to me. The proof is in the pudding. I'm not trying to convert anybody to anything. It's about being properly resourced and having more access and more tool and more capability to think for ourselves using astrology. So I think astrology is incredibly powerful, but do I do a reading and then make believe in my head, oh my gosh, I just changed that person's life? Absolutely. I do another reading, oh my gosh, I just saved the world. I'll let you know, I almost never experience that. I'm critical on us all as much as I am myself because I actually care. I actually want to move things forward. Again, a lot of the people you think are evil because they're pushing on things and poking people's buttons. That's really ironic, isn't it? Maybe they're exposing the things that other people don't want to talk about. And then, oh, you're complaining. No, this is how we actually take things into the future. So I'm actually constantly frustrated doing astrology. I can't tell you. Well, I'm trying to identify why isn't this working better? Because I believe it could be working better. Again, the theme of this full moon is let's do it better. Let's actually build. Let's take this into the future. Let's not just idly dream. Let's make our dreams a reality. That's going to take a lot of time, effort, step-by-step process. So I think the number one issue in delivering astrology is people have no idea what astrology actually is. And all I'm trying to do is say, listen, if I do a reading for you, it's not so much about me telling you what's going to happen in the future. I want to explain to you what your life is and why, so as you continue to live the rest of your life, you're not confused about having the particular experiences that you do. And it never manages to blow my mind. It's always blowing my mind how I'll do a reading and we'll talk about someone's life for 90 minutes, but the only thing they can remember is they ask me, am I going to get married to this person? And then I'm like, let's not talk about that. Or maybe I'll say, give it a year. And that person will walk away from the reading and the only thing they hear in their damn head is, let's give it a year. We just spent 90 minutes talking about your life, but there's this assumption that astrology and astrologers are going to tell you what's going to happen in the future. Am I going to be with them? And then if I don't spoon feed you the answer that you want to hear from me, that's the only part that's retained. And it's like, this is not what astrology is about. This is not what astrology is for. And stop coming to me, asking me to tell you what the future is. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in telling you where your soul wants to go. I'm interested in the whole species knowing where humanity wants to go. Then we can understand where the future wants to take us without us being all hung up on these really particular and usually irrelevant things. All right. So that was my rant on the whole demographic of souls in spiritual stage consciousness. Okay. This is a little harsh, I realize, but this is the truth. The majority of folks tuning into this channel are in a spiritual stage of evolution themselves. And the majority of souls I see in spiritual stage of evolution are sorting through their own delusions. They're sorting through what is actually real spirituality. Because is hearing these voices and getting these downloads and having these visions and having these dreams real spirituality? I would say that's the part of being a human that's called having an imagination. Spirituality is when you're using your imagination in a way that works. Okay, so imagination's Pisces, Neptune land. Pisces, Neptune stationing retrograde, fog machine is turning off. Sorry, folks, I got to call it for what it is. A lot of this spirituality out there is fog machine. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. And we have cults and groups of people that come together and enable one another's delusions, and they call each other spiritual, and they will call anybody who bursts the bubble on their delusions dark, bad, or evil. That's me. I get typecast into that role all the fucking time. And I'm not doing any activations for you. I'm not using my imagination to create colorful visions and then telling you, let's go through this colorful visional world together, and then you just changed the world. Congratulations. Oh, you must feel really good about yourself. It's all bullshit. If you really want to learn visualization, guided meditation, learn hypnosis. Study Milton Erickson. Study the science of using the unconscious, symbolism, metaphor, storytelling, visualization in the most effective way. And the reason so many bullshitters out there are going to continue to flounder around in their delusional world and not learn the science of hypnosis is y'all don't actually care. For those who wants to make their medicine as effective as it possibly can be, it's going to take a little bit of work, effort, and self-awareness. We're measuring in our own practice what's working and what's not. The same way my takeaway from doing astrology reading is not I'm single-handedly saving the world. This is what everybody needs. It needs to stay exactly this way. No, I'm aware of what's not working. It frustrates me, and then that encourages me to make changes. Okay, so I'm sorry, but a huge percentage of people in spiritual stage consciousness are floating around in their imagination as a coping mechanism to very severe traumas. And we are not even able to turn the fog machine off until we are capable of recognizing and desiring to heal those deeper traumas, which is going to involve us having to go into them, going into our wounds, going into our fears, going into our hell realms. The amount of disassociation, pretend, imagination, and I'm letting you know, it's actually the majority of people in spiritual consciousness are floating around here, is due to this collective PTSD that many of us are not even ready to admit to ourselves yet. But it's going to go very, very deep. It's going to go back into childhood. It's going to go back into the errors of our culture, our society, our religion. And it takes an enormous amount of self-accountability to admit, I'm a little bit broken. My consciousness is fragmented. I'm a little bit dissociated. Why am I talking with other beings? Why am I having visions of the future? Why am I having these downloads and dreams? It is one part having those gifts. We're magical. We're special. We're talented. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, folks. And it is two, because we are a little bit out of body. Okay, so we need discernment. We need to judge. Stop saying judgment is a bad thing. All you're doing is opting for pretend. And I'm letting you know it's never been in my experience, because I'm surrounded by this demographic 100% of the time, right? I never get a break. It's always these people are coming to me. I can discern who's actually going to be my friend and who's going to vilify me at the end of the day. Because somebody who needs to exist in pretend is not going to be able to land in the 3D with me. And I got Saturn in his own sign of Capricorn. I got Venus trine that Saturn in Taurus. I want to build. I don't want to talk about a new culture and society. I want to contribute to it. I want to form communities that are existing in new ways, and the results are measurable. You want to be an oracle, a healer, a priestess, a shaman, whatever the fuck you want to call yourself. You are providing medicine that's going to give something useful to another human, and you can measure that. And if there's an avoidance to that judgment, an avoidance to that measurement, it is guaranteed bullshit. And the bullshitters attract other bullshitters to enable their pretend worlds. And all I'm simply attempting to do through putting out these broadcasts consistently is to create a stark divide using discernment. Who is invested in healing and who is invested in escapism? Because in the spiritual worlds, we are not all the same. And I'm letting you know there are more people invested in escapism than healing. So there's going to be more opportunities to get bullshit activations and to spend your money on pretend than to invest in something that will actually benefit you or your another person life. One more astrological tidbit before we wrap up this rant, and I hope this was a enlivening one for you. Again, the theme of the day is we're starting with this new moon square to Neptune. Neptune stationing retrograde is this deeper purpose, what's real and what's not real. And then the full moon in Cap trine to Jupiter on the nodes of Jupiter, super ambitious, let's make it real. That's why I'm preaching. Small term connected with the long term, reflected back to the specific demographic I'm preaching to. Hope that helps. All right. So as we get into July, the moon's nodes are going to complete their transit as Scorpio Taurus polarity, enter Aries Libra polarity, and square Pluto at the last degree of Capricorn. I've mentioned this in prior videos, so hopefully this is evoking your memory when I spoke to there being this growing reverberation between the Taurus need for self-preservation, sovereignty, spaciousness, simplicity, get me the fuck away from them so I can actually rest and digest what just happened, with South Node Scorpio. We got to dive in. We got to push our limits. We got to explore the unknown. We got to get our hands messy. We need intimacy. We need connection. We need soul merging, not just the superficial type of connection, but actual merging souls. That means getting our hands messy because every single human is not just a good guy or a bad guy. We've all got the full spectrum in us. So Scorpio is that bottom of the barrel reality. High intensity claustrophobic experiences getting pushed beyond our limits into rest, peace, going much slower than we ever went. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, increasing this intensity that is pushing us. This North Node going from Taurus to Aries is this pushing into individuality, autonomy. We have to know who we are. Our own system of value, our own desires, to be able to show up in the world, in relationship, in a way that will work. If we don't know who we are, we can get absorbed into somebody else. We can get absorbed into a cult. You can just listen to me and believe every single thing that I say without questioning any of it. Please don't. But really, this dynamic is to push us into a fundamental shifting of integrating body and soul by knowing our needs, knowing our limits, so that way we can create these realms where we can also push on the limits, get into our passions, explore the unknown, and bring our soul back online. We have to be willing to look at the stuff we don't want to look at. That is Pluto square the South Node in Scorpio. We have to integrate that Pluto through that Scorpio South Node. So I'm going to conclude on this note, and this is again a progressive idea. It is coming directly from my observations, having had thousands of clients, but witnessing the world. It's not coming from somebody told me this idea. This is what I see. And it's an uncomfortable truth. See, the other people cover the comfortable truths already. That's why I speak the uncomfortable truths, and I'm more likely to be vilified. As we're closing the tail end of Pisces age, and Pisces used to be ruled by Jupiter. This full moon is on Jupiter's nodes, trine to Jupiter. Again, Jupiter is ambition. It is morality. It's what is the purpose of life? Well, at the tail end of the age of Pisces, which was the so-called Christian era, this monotheistic religion monocropped humanity into these ideas that if we believe the right things, we'll be saved, and good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. There is this moralism, these beliefs that are oriented towards what a good girl should do versus a bad girl should do that are highly assumptive. They don't know that something is healthy or not healthy. We just assume topically, judge a book by its cover. Oh, it must be that thing. We don't involve ourselves in that. Oh, it's science. That's, anti-spiritual. We don't involve ourselves in that. What, don't you have a heart? You crazy doctor scientist? Obviously that's assumptive. That's wildly insane. So at the tail end of Pisces, we are going to collectively be invited to explore that which on the surface may seem inappropriate. Things that are highly complex, things that are unknown, including the future. And historically, this is where we've lost our humanity, right? The left-hand feminine tantric path was lost. Global wars, propaganda, genocide, all of that happens via this not actually knowing, but assuming, oh, those people on the other continent, they're bad guys. They're savages. We need to teach them our American values, be the good guys, okay? This pathology is still all pervasive. It is, again, an excuse, a coping mechanism. This good guys fighting bad guys is bullshit. If we don't recognize the good and evil in ourselves, we are in danger of causing serious harm, right? Hitler believed he was a good guy, conquering the world, helping everybody else, right? So if we don't recognize the propensity for evil in ourselves, we're fucked. We're probably going to harm people in the long term. Get out of your cult way of thinking. Get out of these enabling cult groups that are extremely dangerous. Sincerely, extremely dangerous. So collectively, as an evolutionary requirement, we're going to have to find that which is outside of our assumptions, including the future. Things that are really uncomfortable to us, such as AI. If we vilify AI and say nobody ever touch AI, we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot because everyone's going to be dependent on AI in 5 minutes. All of our technology is going to be using it, whether or not we're consciously aware of that or not. So if we take this very righteous perspective that, oh, AI is bad, let's condemn AI, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. If we want the best artificial intelligence damage prevention, it would be education on how to use AI in the best possible way, period. So we have to be willing to get our hands dirty and explore the unknown or mysterious thing that we may superficially judge or assume is negative on the surface level or at first. That's how we're going to spiritually evolve out of dying Pisces age belief system delusion and assumption into an Aquarian age where God and our species is wanting us to move into a collective direction of objectivity, detachment, and pure observation, seeing and measuring something, A plus B equals C, running experiments and chemical reactions to see how to take things in the future in a pragmatic, measurable, what you see is what you get type of way. Aquarius is not this fairy, shiny, believe it, get on your hands and knees and sacrifice yourself. It is, man, take your power back. Woman, take your power back. Know who you are, know what you're working with, and know what you're working with so we can create the best that we can via our God-given gift of innovation. All right, that was a bit of a talk this week. I hope to see you all in my community. We'll be meeting again this next month of July for our forthcoming Q&A. We also got forthcoming meetings for those who are interested in talking about everything we just mentioned. So if you are a pioneer from the future and you're looking forward or looking to connect with other like minds, check out the Rasa Leela community. We are continuing to incubate, creatively motivate and inspire one another to take things in the future, to recognize our unique individual God-given gifts, as well as our unique challenges via the mirror of astrology, so that way we can hop back on our horse and maybe even come into a spiritual position ourselves, not only doing our hatha yoga in the morning, but doing so to come to a position of purpose by offering our individual gifts back to the collective, so to establish a true connection, a true feeling of being connected to something bigger than just ourself. That connection does not depend upon our imagination, our pretending, or making stuff up. We're going to feel charged of universal force if we orient ourselves to actually bettering the human species. In that regard, I am tipping my hat to you. Thank you for being a part of this movement. And as always, I look forward to connecting with you next time.